Hi there, welcome along to the Racing Post great new weekly golf show, The Sweet Spot. I'm Bruce Millington and I'm delighted to be joined by Seb Carmichael-Brown to look back on last week's action, but more importantly to hopefully guide you towards some winners for this week's two tournaments. And to help us to do that, a very familiar face will be joining us soon. But first of all, Seb, welcome along to the Racing Post stable. Delighted to have you. You've been out and about. You were in Abu Dhabi 2 weeks ago. You were in America last week. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with golf and what you're going to be bringing to the Sweet Spot.
A lot of pressure. Well, no, to be honest, I'm really looking forward to it. And I have been a busy boy the last couple of weeks. I was out there in Abu Dhabi for the European E-Tour, which was good, out in America last week. Basically, what I do is I make a lot of content about golf on YouTube, on different other social media platforms. I get to do a bit of filming with a lot of the players. So
do you hang with the stars?
Every now and then. I wouldn't say hang, but I've got to interact with quite a few of the golfers.
Who's your best buddy? Who do you like best?
They're all such lovely guys, aren't they, Bruce? You know, I'm going to sit on the fence. One guy I do like very much is Adrian Ortegi. He's a very good guy and started to find some form the last couple of years. I'm hoping 2020 could be a big year for him, you know?
Fantastic. And do you have a sickeningly low handicap as well?
It's going the wrong way at the moment. I'm currently off 4. But it is leaking. It is leaking. We need some bandage on that handicap right now. All this filming takes you away from playing some real golf, you see.
I was planning on having a game with you, but if you're going to play off 4, that is not going to happen.
Well, it just sounds like we're giving a lot of shots, potentially.
We're getting a lot of shots. But let's get stuck into what happened last week, because it was Australia Day, and the Australians were very much to the fore, albeit the bookmakers didn't give them a great chance. Well, let's look and see what happened last week. And let's start with Dubai first. Well, Lucas Herbert was the toast of the bookmakers because he came from absolutely nowhere, didn't he, on that final day? It was an extraordinary last round because you had loads of big names up there and they all fell away. It was bizarre, wasn't it, Seb? And the 200 to 1 shot Herbert comes through and nicks it in a playoff. Well,
it was his first win as well. You saw the emotion as he made that birdie putt. But he had a lot of work to do to get there. He had a lot of birdie chances coming down the stretch and he pulled back Bezuidenhout, who had a fair bit of daylight coming down the stretch. So he'll be feeling very disappointed. One thing that's worth noting is they went to a playoff and the first sudden death hole, Lucas hit it in the water. He had to make up and down to save par. Bezuidenhout went long. It was a tussle all the way. He picked it up, and as I said, you saw that emotion come out as he made that short birdie putt to win his first European Tour title.
There was some amazing fast play and some amazing slow play. Let's deal with the arch enemy, Bryson DeChambeau, first.
Yes.
Speed up, you horrible snail. Cannot stand it. It's absolutely outrageous. It was brilliant Eddie Pepperell, who's obviously the king of social media on golf, he was drawn against him and they'd had all sorts of issues in the past, didn't they? They apparently got on okay, but DeChambeau still couldn't help himself, still got on the clock, didn't he?
Well, the thing about slow play, it is not great. No one likes to see it. But when you're playing good golf, like JB Holmes famously won that event playing the slowest you've ever seen, but he won. So you sort of like hard, but Bryson DeChambeau had an absolute shocker of a final round.
And that was
so
great.
If you're going to be slow and rubbish, you're going to be in trouble.
But tell us about the fast golf from your namesake.
Yes, Sebastian Soderberg, absolutely. He took the record off Thomas Pieters for the fastest ever European Tour round, just over an hour and a half, and he somehow managed to shoot 3 over par. Tell you what, I'll be delighted shooting 3 over par, taking all the time in the world. So it's a phenomenal round, and you saw the effects of it on his caddy, who basically nearly passed out after carrying a big bag like that in a hot place like Dubai. Yeah, fair play to him both.
He was the hero, really,
absolutely,
wasn't he, the caddy? That was incredible. But if he can do it in 90 minutes, why it's taken these other people 6 hours, it is absolutely outrageous.
Okay, but moving over to America, the Farmers Insurance Open, we had the other Australian, Marc Leishman. He looked like he was going to run away with it at one point, overtaking the 54-hole leader Jon Rahm, who went lights out down the stretch. 3 birdies to close. Wasn't quite enough, though, to catch what's known as Leishmania.
I was on Jon Rahm, and it was such a depressing start, wasn't it? He was all over the place. He was dancing with a cactus at one point. But, yeah, a great finish. But it's just, you know, another great result for the bookmakers with Leishman.
Yeah.
He's a player who does know how to win, though, isn't he, Seb?
Oh, definitely. I mean, he's a very confident guy. When he gets on that sort of form, he made 150 feet of putts in that final round.
And hit 3 fairways.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. You know, there was a stat around strokes gained for Leishman against the field. It literally defies any logic you can apply to golf data with what he did there. It was really surprising as well to see Jon Rahm struggle, because normally the front 9 at Tories, where everyone shoots their score and then they sort of hold on on the back nine. Jon Rahm did the absolute opposite. Horror front nine, as did Rory, to be fair, and then came flying through the field. I thought nearly he was going to replicate that eagle that saw him win his first ever PGA Tour event right there at Torrey Pines in 2017. He basically lined up the exact same eagle putt behind that very, very back to front angled green, and literally missed by a foot from
Just
replicating
short,
ridiculous. It was incredible. So fair play to Marc Leishman. Interesting as well what happened to Tiger in that final round. On the second hole, holes out from the fairway for an eagle to get everyone's juices going, lands in the hole, pops back out again. A lot of people talking about, oh, what are the rules? What are the situations here? And, you know, the ball does need to come to rest in the hole. Bit of bad luck, but Tiger's had his fair share of breaks in the past, so I'm sure that's one he just has to give back.
I will just say about Leishman, I know he meant well, and he said afterwards, he said, I just hope I've given the folks back home something to cheer about. Now, let's be realistic here, okay? Australia's burning to a cinder, billions of creatures killed. I'm not sure that if I'm, you know, driving along with my last remaining possessions trying to find somewhere to live and I turn on the radio and hear that Marc Leishman's won a golf tournament, that I'm going to think, wow, it's all good.
It's maybe not the silver lining that Australia are looking for right now, but, you know, it is great to see the Aussie flag flying, and in a historic day for Australia when it comes to golf anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I would say about Torrey Pines, Seb, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, obviously all these tournaments play on great courses, but I think if you could offer me one round at one of these fabulous courses they play at, it's Torrey Pines, because you've done it, haven't you? Tell me, is it really as good as it looks?
I've been very, very fortunate, and it is, to be honest. What's very surprising about it is it's a completely public golf course. Anyone can play there. It's not cheap, but it's not break the bank expensive. There's obviously two courses there, the south and the north. The south course is the one that they play the major events on. It's the one that plays the final round in the Farmers. And it's the north everyone tends to shoot lower scores on. I've played the south, and yeah, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. Miss the fairway, you're in trouble. But there is a little stretch of holes out by the coastline, sort of through the third hole through maybe the 6th, 7th, 8th, which are just breathtaking, like Pebble Beach type breathtaking, all down the side of the cliffs. It's a very, very special place.
And just to make me hate you even more, what's the best course you've ever played?
The best course I've ever played, probably I'll say Portrush, Royal Portrush, over in Northern Ireland. I love my links golf.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do. I went over to Northern Ireland three times last year.
I played
no,
once.
they're not.
They're all the same. They're all the same.
That's ridiculous.
They're all the same.
I'm not
no trees, mounds, hillocks,
no,
a little sea view. They're all
It's an acquired taste. When I first got into links golf, when I first played links golf, I hated it. I was like, this is not fair. This is ridiculous. This is just absurd. But then the more I played it, the more I fell in love with it. And if you give me one round of golf, I pick links golf every day.
Not for me. When we have our game, when I'm getting 28 shots off him, it's not going to be on a links course, I can guarantee you that. Okay, let's move on to this week. We've got two cracking tournaments in America and in Saudi Arabia. We'll start with the Phoenix Open. But before we do that, let's say a big hello to Steve Palmer. Steve, great to have you back on the show. Are you in good form?
Yes. Very impressed with the new setup. I think this is a dawn of a great new era.
Excellent. Steve, Steve. You actually look very similar. So I'm glad one of you's in Weymouth and one of you's next to me, because it could get a bit confusing. Steve, before we get your fancies for this week, maybe just give us a single reflection on each of last week's tournaments. What did you learn? What was your beady eye picking up?
Well, I was pleased for Lucas Herbert because we know he's got huge potential, but he suffered with a bit of homesickness when he first came onto the circuit. So he's got over that now. He's got his first win. I think Herbert can go from strength to strength. And yeah, the Australians just dominating. I mean, the two players that won last week, but you also had Adam Scott won the Aussie PGA just before Christmas. Wade Ormsby won the Hong Kong Open and Cam Smith won the Sony Open. So Australians absolutely dominant at the moment. And Marc Leishman, of course, was a member of that President's Cup side, the Internationals President's Cup side. Cameron Smith was a member of that. Abraham Arnsel was a member of that and almost won the American Express. So they've taken a lot of confidence from running the Americans so close, I think.
Okay, so the Phoenix Open, we've got a really, really strong field. I'll just run down the front few. There's a kind of big six as far as the betting goes. These are general prices. 13-2 Jon Rahm, 9-1 Justin Thomas, 14 Webb Simpson, 16-1 the golfer that never wins, Matsuyama. 16 Ricky Fowler. 18-1 Xander Schauffele. I think Fowler and Schauffele were playing together last week and both missed the cut. That wasn't very good. And it's about 28-1 bar those six. So, Seb, we'll get your fancies in a minute. But first of all, Steve, run through. How many have you got for us, first of all?
4.
Okay. Let's go with the main one. Who is it?
Well, the main one, I'll give you a clue first. It is...
Wolfie? Martin Adams, the darts player. I didn't know.
Wolfie, not Charles Howell, not David Howell, but I'm a member of the Wolf Pack this week. Matt Wolf. Matt Wolf.
Oh, I see. I should have got that. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a rising star of the PGA Tour, and his followers are known as the Wolf Pack. He's only 20 years old, but he's already off the mark on the PGA Tour. He won the 3M Open last summer, which is only his third tournament as a professional. And he won it with a final hole eagle, really gutsy final hole eagle. Been a little bit inconsistent since, which is understandable. He's making course debuts every week. But over the last 3 months, he's really settled down on the circuit. He was 13th in the Zozo Championship, high-class event in Japan. He was 11th in the Century Tournament of Champions in Hawaii. And then last week, it looked like he was heading for a missed cut. He opened with a 76 at Torrey Pines, followed it up with a 66 on the Friday, ended the event in 21st place. So I think Wolf at 66 to 1. Absolutely massive price this week, because crucially this week, he's got some course experience. In his first PGA Tour appearance, it was at the Phoenix Open as a 19-year-old amateur. And he understandably relished the track. The track sets up really well for him. He averaged 320 yards off the tee, tied for 50th place. And, he returns there a much more confident player with a win under his belt. So, I see Matt Wolf making a similar impression at TPC Scottsdale as JB Holmes did. You remember when JB Holmes turned up and he won in 2006 early in his career? I think Matt Wolf is going to fall in love with TPC Scottsdale and get his second PGA Tour victory.
Will you be able to mime all your tips, or some of them are slightly more complicated? I mean, it'd be difficult to have a mime for Xander Schauffele, for instance, wouldn't it? Not that you necessarily tip in it. We'll find out your other three in a minute. But Seb, if you're only having one bet on the golf in Phoenix this week, who would you go for?
I mean, it's really hard to look past Jon Rahm. He had such good course form here. I'm a guy who likes horses for courses. I really, really subscribe to that. And you combine track record and current form, it's really hard to look past Jon Rahm. I've got a couple of further outside bets. I'll be keen to get Steve's thoughts on those possibly later on as well.
We'll get those in a minute.
Yeah.
But Jon Rahm is your main man. Steve, apart from Matthew Wolff, who are your other three? Rattle through them for us.
My next best is Brandon Grace, who gave Ricky Fowler most worry about last year. Fowler was your winner last year. Grace finished runner-up. And that was Grace's course debut. So he clearly fell in love with TPC Scottsdale immediately. He likes desert golf generally. He's a two-time Qatar Masters champion. And most importantly, recently he's rediscovered his A-game. He finished third in the Alfred Dunhill just before Christmas, a little confidence booster. And then last time out, he won the South African Open by 3 shots. His first time he's won his National Open. Massive boost to morale. Won by 3 shots. He wasn't up against a mug. He had Louis Oosthuizen. He overtook Louis Oosthuizen in the final round. Grace shot a closing 62. The putter was absolutely purring. So I can see Grace going one better than last year. I think Grace will contend again.
Okay, and your other two?
My other two, the third selection is Sungjae Im. Surely only a matter of time before the 2019 Rookie of the Year becomes a PGA Tour champion. He's a 2-time Corn Ferry Tour champion. He nearly won the Sanderson Farms Championship at the end of September. Agonising for us because we were on him that week. He lost in a playoff. And he was joint top scorer in the President's Cup. I've already mentioned that the boost that seems to be having on the internationals, Cam Smith winning, Marc Leishman winning. Sungjae Im was a revelation in the President's Cup, 3.5 points from 5 matches. And they're all carrying that form into January. He was 7th on his Phoenix Open debut last year. Sungjae Im should be contending again. And the final one at an enormous price is Grayson Murray, 225 to 1 out there. Grayson Murray, a huge talent as a youngster. He won 3 consecutive Junior World Championships from 2006 through 2008. Injury and illness has hampered his progress as a professional, but he's won on the Web.com Tour in 2016. He won the Barbasol Championship for a maiden PGA Tour triumph in 2017. And last year he got his PGA Tour card back, played really well at the Corn Ferry Tour finals. And this year, 10th place in the American Express, very encouraging first outing of the year. 4 solid rounds at Torrey Pines last week. So, yeah, Grayson Murray, Scottsdale's a great fit for him, and I think he's an enormous prize.
I don't think Steve's stolen your thunder with Grayson Murray,
no.
has he? You weren't going to tip him, were you?
He's quite a long way down my list, I'll be honest. But, Steve makes some really good points there. I've obviously gone out not really too deep with Jon Rahm as a prediction. He's probably the #1 favourite this week, pretty much everywhere, I'd imagine. But the other 2 picks I've got are slightly further down the rank, but again, with my philosophy of horses for courses. First, starting off with Matt Kuchar, who's going to be somewhere around the 30 to 1 mark, I think. Missed his first cut of the year, which possibly helps give a little bit extra value on him at the Tournament of Champions. But he has fared so well around that course at the Waste Management that I can't see him not contending this week. Very rarely will go back-to-back missed cuts for him. He's such a consistent player, so I fancy him to contend at a half-decent price. And then the other one is going to be a man who is flying back into form after pretty much a long period in the darkness. in the wilderness will be Bubba Watson. Again, phenomenal track record around Phoenix. However, also showed quite a bit of form with a nice little finish last week at the Farmers too. So for me, combine that form and track record, Bubba Watson at a price of around 34, 35 to 1, I think I'll be on him definitely.
Tremendous stuff. So that's the Phoenix done and dusted. Let's look at the Saudi International now. And some more big names from America dominate the market here. Dustin Johnson is round about the 15-2 favourite. We've got 11-1 Brooks Koepka. Big Patrick Reed is 14s. And then it's 25-1 Garcia, Perez, Stenson. Abraham Answer is interesting at 28s. And it's 33 bar. First of all, before Steve gives us his tips, Seb, what's the latest? You're our man on the inside. Are DJ and Brooks friends again? Because they were always best buddies and then they had that little fallout, didn't they? Where are they now?
I think they're both two guys that don't really care about stuff like that, to be as well. DJ doesn't care about anything, as far as I can tell. He's such a chilled character. And Brooks Koepka is, so, you know, he's made those comments about not practicing at all, and his practice is when he plays events. Talk of the guy that turns up for the majors and the other events. Pretty much a regular PGA Tour event is his practice. Quite incredible. So I'm not sure those two are worried by any of that. I think that's all of us building up that storm.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, Steve, how many have you got for this one?
4!
Excellent, thank you. That joke was just as funny the second time. Keep that going throughout the year, please. Who's your main man?
Tom Lewis is my main man, world number 50, having started the year in 54th place. So it's an important few months for him. He wants a Masters debut. He's got to get in the top 50 the week prior to the Masters. He had a great 2019, and it started with the 3rd place in the Saudi International. And then in September, he won the Corn Ferry Tour Championship by 5 shots. An incredible effort to earn a PGA Tour card. He's returned to the European Tour, and he ended with 6th place in the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai. Had a long Christmas, foot off the gas. Admitted to being a bit rusty when he started out again in Abu Dhabi, missed the cut, but last week right back at it, 3rd place in the Dubai Desert Classic. This week he's playing a course that he shot a 62 on last year. I can see a 3rd European Tour title for Tom Lewis on Sunday. While
Steve was making that case, you were nodding away there, Seb.
I really was. I love the Tom Lewis pick this week. When you talk about a comeback from this sort of the obscure place that Tom Lewis has been the last few years after coming through as a really promising youngster. And he's an Englishman as well. I love that. I'll be definitely rooting for him this week. Loves a Friday. Loves a Friday. Saw him shoot a very low number on Friday at this event last year. A very low number in Dubai last week on a Friday. So maybe he's one to get on for like a low round of the day on a Friday potentially. Yeah. Maybe he needs a round to warm up and he just goes all for leather ahead of the weekend. So I think he's going to offer great value this week. For me, again, you've got quite a weirdly weighted field. This is an event that promises quite a lot of appearance money for the players. So it does bring in the likes of DJs and your Brooks Koepkas. Sergio Garcia will be back this week after pretty much getting escorted off the premises for having a slightly frustration getting the better of him last year out there. He started
attacking the greens, didn't he?
Yeah, it probably wasn't his finest moment. He's a very hot-headed guy, wears his heart on his sleeve, and that can be great for us to see, but it wasn't too enjoyable for the Saudi officials. So
he's gone back with his tail between his legs this week, hasn't he? And waived his appearance fee, I think, hasn't he?
So I hear. He's waived his appearance money. He's back, one of the few guys in the field that are playing just for the prize money, if you like, this week. And I think that intent from Sergio shows that he maybe wants to put that right. So you'd like to think he's going to go with a little bit of extra impetus to try and get his name up the top of that leaderboard. So I think he could be an interesting one to look out for. Another one I'm going to go for, Steve, what do you think about this? Martin Kaymer, shown a bit of a recent resurgence. Last week, finished with a tied 16th place. He's got a phenomenal track record in the Middle East. Back when he was playing his best golf, he seemed to be podium finishing every year when he's playing out in the Dubai region. So for me, just a little bit further inland at Saudi Arabia, I fancy him at a pretty decent price of around 31 to 1. I think he could be a good each way bet.
You used to love Kaymer, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah, I've always been a huge Martin Kaymer fan. I mean, he's a proven desert rat, used to dominate in Abu Dhabi, and he's got his old caddy back on the bag now, hasn't he? He's got the wee man back on the bag, and I think they're gonna improve it as weeks go by. But yeah, he's not for me this week. My next best is Adri Arnous, who is a Dubai resident now. These Middle East events hold no fears for him, and that comfort showed last week when he tied for 3rd with Lewis in the Desert Classic. Adrian Arnous is an absolutely world-class driver of the ball. bundles of power, and I can see him taking Royal Greens apart, because although this is a short course, 7,010 yards par 70, the powerhouses absolutely dominated last year. There's lots of short par fours around the sort of 350 range, and they can get close to the green in one. It really encourages attacking golf. I think Adrianus will enjoy it. He won the 2018 Challenge Tour Grand Final in UAE, so he's got a good desert record already. So, yeah, they're my two best bets, Tom Lewis, Adrianus.
And then who are you going for apart from those two, Steve?
And then two more bigger prices. Minwoo Lee. I'm a massive fan of this Aussie youngster. He's got a glorious swing. He's oozing power. He's only 21 years old, going to be a superstar. Australians, as we discussed, dominating at the moment. I think Minwoo Lee can keep that run going. He was third in the Aussie PGA just before Christmas, then 15th in the South African Open on his first visit to that country. So he's been going to uncharted terrain and doing well. This time, he tees up at a venue he knows well. He played in the Saudi International last year, and he closed with back-to-back 63s. You might need me to repeat there. It's so astonishing. Back-to-back 63s over the weekend. So hard to follow up a low round with another low round. He did that in spectacular fashion. Finished fourth in the Saudi International last year, and he was world number 979 at the time. This time he goes back, much more confident player. And then the final one is Gavin Green, another power pack youngster, improving all the time. He won the Asian Tour Order of Merit in 2017, been threatening a European Tour breakthrough since then, and he's made a very tidy start to the year. 15th in the South African Open, 21-27 in the two desert events. He played last year, finished 11th in the Saudi International, 4 solid rounds, and the course suits him well.
I want to get your views on the big three at the front of the market, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka and Patrick Reed. Out of those three, Seb, who do you like best and who do you like least?
I'll tell you who I like least, and it is not anything against you personally, Brooks, but for this week, I'm afraid I'm going to say avoid Brooks Koepka, mainly because your price is going to be so short. I'm talking to Brooks here. Brooks,
I know.
I'm sorry, mate, but your price is far too short.
Has he told you he's watching?
The thing is, the guy's a superstar, right? He's an absolute animal. He had a pretty poor showing by his standards over in Abu Dhabi. And yeah, I also think, you know, he is one of a lot of the American players are incredibly affected by what's happened recently with Kobe Bryant's death, which is obviously a huge tragedy for the whole sporting world. Brooks maybe more than most. He put out a very emotional post on his Instagram page. So with that combined, I mean, maybe that'll inspire him. I don't know. But I think not for me this week. The one you can't really ignore is Dustin Johnson, who's sort of run off the boil by his standards as of late. You know, he's a guy that tends to get at least one win every single year out on tour. I think he tied for 7th at the Tournament of Champions, which by his standards isn't great in a smaller, reduced field. With what Steve's saying about the short par fours there, he's going to be around the green in pretty much all of those. I expect a lot of eagles from him this week. So be between him and Patrick Reed, who is also showing some really strong form. But between the three, I'll go DJ.
Steve, what are your views on the three that dominate the market?
Yeah, I don't fancy Brooksy either. I mean, I'll address him directly as well. He likes me to call him Cupcake. Yeah, I don't fancy you this week, Cupcake. You didn't look like you're over your knee injury. He played in Abu Dhabi. He made a fast start, but he was unimpressive over the closing rounds. Yeah, I don't think he's a good bet this week. I think Dustin Johnson, I agree with Seb. I think Dustin Johnson is very close to a bet at 15-2. You know, he's the only course winner at this track. Won it well last year, and he's hungry, isn't he? He hasn't played much lately because of his knee surgery. Made his comeback at the President's Cup. And then, apart from a few loose drives in the Century Tournament Champions, he was right in there. So, yeah, I really do fear Dustin Johnson this week.
OK, so, chaps, just spin through your tips, if you would. Phoenix Open, Steve Palmer.
Matt Wolff, Brandon Grace, Sun Yim and Grayson Murray.
And Seb Carmichael-Brown.
Matt Kuchar and Bubba Watson.
And in the Saudi International, Steve.
Tom Lewis, Adrianus, Minwoo Lee and Gavin Green.
And who are you going for, Seb?
I'm going to go with Martin Kaymer and also one I didn't mention earlier, Ian Poulter. A lot of value there for Poulter, I think.
Wow. OK, thank you very much indeed. We've got plenty of questions coming. I put an appeal out for questions on Twitter yesterday and they have come flooding in. So let's do those now. OK, first up, Liam says, any outsider tips to make the Ryder Cup team at this stage of the year? Arnaus and McIntyre are two exciting players I'd like to see there. Seb, what are your views there? I think you're a McIntyre fan, aren't you?
Absolutely. The lefty, Bobby Mack himself. Yeah, he's a great guy as well, you know, really sort of good aura and playing some incredible stuff. He's got a lot of work to do. He's found form only quite recently, so he's going to have to go some. Probably need to get a win, I reckon, to get himself on that team, but doable.
I checked the latest odds. He's only 2-1. Arnaus is 20-1. Steve, do either of those appeal to you as potential Ryder Cuppers this year?
Yeah, it's feasible. I mean, McIntyre seems to be over this hand injury he had. But I like Victor Perez. You have to give him a squeak, given how consistent he's become. I mean, I know he flopped in Dubai on Sunday, but he hardly ever has a bad round these days.
Steve, Alan Stainton says, what does Steve make of Tiger's equipment change? Apparently he's got a new driver and a ball. A cold putter stopped him going close this week. In this form, should he win on his next 3 starts? You tipped Tiger. He gave you a good run for your money, Steve. First of all, what do you make of the equipment changes? And what do you think Tiger can achieve in the first part of the year?
Yeah, I was a bit worried about the new driver because he finished last year playing really well with the old one, but he seemed to adjust to it fairly quickly. The new ball was fine, apart from the fact it can climb out of holes. I mean, that second shot to the second hole on Sunday was a heartbreaker for me. But yeah, I think Woods has got the equipment under control, and I think he would be a big runner at Riviera next time out.
Can you see good times ahead for Tiger as well, Seb?
Massive Tiger Woods fanboy, to be honest. So it's so great for me to see him right up there. I'm a fellow TaylorMade man as well, as Tiger pretty much is throughout his bag now. That new sim driver, he seemed to have it working really, really well. And while that's working well, getting rid of that one big miss he's always saying he's afraid of, I think it's going to be a good year for Tiger fans.
Excellent. I have a deal with Nike. They paid me £1,000 and said, never, ever use our equipment again. We don't want anything to do with a hacker like you. This is one for you, Seb, being a buddy of all the locker room guys. Often when you meet your sporting heroes, you can be disappointed. Which golfers have you met that more than met your expectations, and which has been a letdown?
I will go Rory McIlroy for the first part of that. Just a fantastic guy, absolutely fantastic. And what I like about Rory most of all is he gives me hope, because he's actually, believe it or not, don't look too surprised, he's about my height.
Yeah.
He's crazy when you think about the power he generates. He's about my height. He's obviously quite strong, but he's far from big. And to do what he does and has such a great aura around him, I was very, very fortunate to meet him a couple of times.
Right, come on then. Who did you meet and thought, oh, Christ, he's a bit of a...
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go with, not anything against him necessarily, but we had a funny moment with Ian Poulter at the PGA Championships at Bellerive last year. I was doing the on-course reporting, had a few questions. Well, I was working for 11 Sports, and we were there doing a few questions with Polks. He came in, he said, oh, who's this, 11? Well, is that about as many people are watching? And I thought that was quite funny. I laughed at the time. Everyone knows Polk was a bit of a love or hate guy. I actually love him, the postman, but that was quite an enjoyable bit of banter he gave us out there.
Who'd have thought it, Ian Poulter, eh? Steve, who have you got? I mean, you're very close friends with a couple of players, aren't you? Dazzler's your main man, isn't he?
Well, Dazzler was always my hero, and then when I got to meet him at the Cheltenham Festival, he certainly didn't let me down. You know, I think he's one of the biggest characters in sport. But so
yeah, this is Darren Clark we're talking about, obviously. Dazzler to Steve.
Yeah. That's
the D-dog.
Yeah, he's a good egg. Yeah, and if we're going to name drop, I've played around with Rory, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Played at Royal Dublin, and he was a world number 9 at that point. He was only young, still a teenager, and he's always been a top egg.
And have you ever met anyone who's disappointed you, Steve, on your travels? You attend most Opens, don't you?
I do attend most Opens. No, I wouldn't dare be so unkind to anyone. I mean, they're all doing a high pressure job. But yeah, I'm certainly not an Ian Poulter fan. Provide the contrast of that. I don't like arrogance, and Poulter seems to exude that. I mean, Bryson DeChambeau has raced past him as the most unlikable golfer going down. So I wouldn't like to meet Bryson DeChambeau.
No, nor would I. Now, this is a nice easy one. Give us a lucky 15 for the 4 majors, lads. Steve, you've already done this, so you should be fairly well prepared. You've got this all sorted out, haven't you?
I have got this all sorted out. Yeah, in the Christmas Eve edition of the Racing Post, we tipped a 52,000 to 1 chance, which is Justin Thomas to win the Masters, Rory McIlroy to win the USPGA, Tiger Woods to win the US Open, and then Dustin Johnson to win the Open Championship. So,
and has anything happened to change your mind on those 4?
No, not at all. I mean, Justin Thomas has won since then, so I'm not sure that 52,000 want to be available anymore. It's got the bookies on the run. So, I'm excited about that bet. If Dustin Johnson is in contention for a 52,001 winner on the Sunday of the Open Championship, I'll have an interesting time up there.
Well, it would be entirely unfair to spring such a difficult question on you, Seb, so I'm just going to simplify it slightly. Give us 1 bet for a major this year.
1 bet for a major. You know what I was going to go for? It's big outside bet. I was going to say that this might be the year we see Jordan Spieth return to the podium finish, certainly at a major. He's not done much to prove me right thus far. He's actually just for the first time in a long time fallen outside the top 50 in the world. So yeah, it's not looking great, but I think he's got it between the ears. I think he doesn't need many tweaks to find his golf swing, and then as soon as he gets the tiniest bit of confidence, I'm very much hoping that Jordan Spieth will return, maybe at Augusta. Wouldn't that be special?
Really, that's amazing, because that was another question. Someone said, what has happened to Spieth and why? Steve, what has happened to him and why?
Yeah, world number 51. Well, that long game's always been a little bit frail for me. It's technically not a fantastic swing. So I'm not entirely surprised it's gone wrong, but Seb's right. Mentally, there's a few stronger players out there, so you'd expect him to climb back. Phoenix Open this week is a good chance for him. He's forgiven off the tee, so this could be the start of the comeback this week.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much for sending your questions in. We will do more of those in the coming weeks. Thanks very much for your input, Steve. I know you've got to go off and crack on with your previews for tomorrow's Racing Post. Don't forget, the Wednesday Racing Post is a must-have for the most in-depth previews, Steve's tips, all the prices, form guides, stats, and everything else. Seb, that's the first show done and dusted. Thank you very much indeed. What does the next few days hold? Because you've been gallivanting all around the world, taking in all the glamour of the golf course. You're just going to take it easy this weekend, watch a bit?
Less travel, I think, definitely. Might try and get out on the golf course here in the UK if the courses will open.
You play winter golf?
Well, I do actually. I love it that much, mate. I'll play in pretty much anything. Stick the waterproofs on and get out there. So hopefully a little bit of golf for me. A couple of Hashtag United games. Actually got a Hashtag United game tonight, but on the football side of things. But yeah, it's been great. I've loved being on. Looking forward to next week already.
Indeed. And next week we'll be looking ahead to the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am as the US Tour stays on the West Coast. And then the European Tour moves down to Australia and we've got the Victoria Open. So join myself, Seb and Steve Palmer for best tips on those two next week. Thanks for joining us on The Sweet Spot.